This meeting is being recorded.
This is Miss Rhonda. Welcome to the TME podcast. Please continue to listen to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. Like and share and leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening. This is Miss Rhonda, and I will see you at the top.
All right, welcome everybody to TME Podcast. I am Miss Rhonda. If you don't know who I am, and I have a special guest on today, Mr. Alex Fuller. Alex Hood Fuller? How you doing, Alex?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you.
I am good. So, Alex, first of all, I don't even know if this is appropriate to ask, but how old are you?
26.
You're 26? You know, you look younger than 26.
Everybody tells me that.
That's a good thing, no. So, Alex, tell us a little bit about yourself.
And this is the moment where I forget every single detail that has ever made me me.
That just means you've done a lot. That's all.
Yeah. I'm Baltimore native, born and raised. First half of my life was in Emerson Village. Second half of my life was in the county. Well, actually, at this point, it's actually more in the county than in the city.
Okay.
Went to public school, did a couple years of college. I've been a music major. I've been a writing major. I've been to several different countries.
Oh, really? Okay.
I've gotten to play with the jazz performer Michael Johnson. I've gotten to perform on a cruise ship. Those are things just in service of the what I like to think are my talents. My music and my writing are two primary things that I do. I'm heavy into comic books, especially Marvel. I love all things nerdy except Doctor Who and Star Trek. I can't get with it.
So wait, let's go back for a second. You said you traveled to several countries. So how were you able to do that?
I am what you would call lucky. My parents do pretty well for themselves, so they were able to give me things. Not everybody.
Okay.
I wouldn't present it as something that I've carved out for myself. I didn't like. I'm not down in the trenches and earning all of this. I mean, I'm not saying I haven't ever paid my way places or whatever, but I would definitely not have half of the experiences that I've had if it weren't for my parents. So they definitely get all the credit for a lot of the things that have molded me and allowed me to see a lot of the things that I've gotten to see. I've gotten so much of my inspiration from the places I've gone.
Okay.
It's just by virtue of seeing a different, and I'm not even super deep into it. I can't really tell you a whole lot of things about the places I've gone because I'm just not really like that guy. I don't really do that. But just seeing it, like just having my foot touch soil that's not like America, it just fills my head with all sorts of things like, wow, this is like I'm halfway across the world. You know what I mean? People do things a little differently here. People talk a little differently here. I can drink here legally. I would be breaking the law back home. This is, all things like that. So yeah, I definitely give my parents the credit for that.
Okay, so now with that being said, so let's talk a little bit about your music. Since you said you used to play instruments, so are you writing or what is your music talent?
I'm primarily a drummer. I can dabble on the piano a little bit, but that's not as developed. It used to be. I was classically trained, but I didn't keep up with that. So I kind of now rely on my ear more than anything else, and I don't really like the piano as much as I like the drums. So my drumming is a lot more developed than my piano is, and most of the time when I'm doing things places, it's on the drums because that's what my circle kind of knows me for. I don't really write music. I've made music, but I don't really notate it or anything like that, and I don't really brand it either because it's one of those things that I enjoy doing, but I don't enjoy the work that comes with it. So I don't pursue it professionally because I know that to do that, it will require like a whole lot of something that I just don't. Yeah, that too. Time, effort, frustration, discipline, a whole bunch of stuff that I would rather funnel toward my writing rather than my music. And music is not one of those things that I want to hate. And when I was actually being a music major, I realized I didn't love music enough to torture myself over it. I wanted it to be this thing that I just always enjoyed doing. And so I do it casually. I play for my church and I do that consistently. But in terms of like actually doing something with it outside of that, I just take whatever comes.
Okay. So now let's delve into your writing. So tell us about your writing and what you like to write, your genre.
I do urban fantasy. So basically my version of Lord of the Rings with Black people. And by that I just mean like the the swords, the dragons, all the monsters and things like that.
That sounds interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and I give it a Christian spin. I'm a very that's the other thing about me that I didn't mention. I'm very very religious, or at least I try to be. I've grown up in the church all my life. Kind of came into it myself maybe about 10 years ago when I really decided. I was like, I think I believe this. So
okay.
So everything I write usually has that kind, if not overtly, then definitely as an undertone. I don't really write agnostic things. I'm not. I just have a philosophy that I swear by. So even in the more fantastical stories that I've written, that it's personifying spiritual warfare as described in the Bible. The characters, they talk about the figures in the Bible, but in a historical sense. Like, some of them are angels, so they've been around for a while. So like you'll have one angel who sits down and tells one of our modern day characters, how Paul was to, or if Mary was fun to talk to, or, if Jesus was really what everybody said he was, or if he had like a social life or anything like that. So it's like that, it's all presented to be something that really happened. And there are these people who, in our modern day see them as myths, and there are these other creatures who have been around since day one who were there, and they get to tell the stories, and you get to intersect the two worlds and the things that come from that.
I like that. So what age group do you generally write for? You write for adults or teens or children, or a combination of?
Definitely teens. I try my hand at the kid thing. I don't have a muse for it. I don't really know how to reach children. I used to like be really good with kids, but I got grumpy, and now it's hard for me to put myself in the headspace where
of a child.
of a child. So I started like about 13 and up. I'm not necessarily certain that my work would appeal to like adults, because it's adults like to be all high
stuffy.
Yeah, exactly. So got a girl running around with a cape, and then people start to kind of look at you and go, they lump it in with everything. So you just, I feel like I'll just stick with the adolescence and teen. And
Now with teenagers being, they're in between that stage of finding themselves and trying to fit in, how or what do you think is the best way to get them interested in reading Christian literature, Christian books, or just even, getting them interested? Because most of them, by the time they're between 11 and 15, they are really uninterested in the religious aspect, unless they're being kind of forced into it or just really grew up into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point. And I've definitely considered that. I've come to the conclusion that I think you should just approach it the same way you approach any of these stories of mythology, Norse mythology, Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology. If you don't believe it, then don't believe it. It's a work of fiction. I'm not writing the Bible. I'm not claiming that my story happened. I'm not trying to suggest that this is some kind of historical documentation. This is a complete work of fantasy fiction that just this is biblical mythology, for lack of a better term. If that's, and people can read Percy Jackson, they can wrap their mind around that, and they can read Thor and Hercules and all that and wrap their minds around that, and they just they look at it as these stories that may or may not have happened, that there was a people who believed them to be true to some degree, and they just treat it like entertaining stories. And I say, go ahead and do the same. I'm not trying to send nobody to hell. I just
You're the second young African American man that I've had on who writes in genres of fantasy where they're creating their own characters and storylines and whatnot, which I think is fantabulous because it says to me that there is a audience for it, right? So let's go back for a second. When you said earlier that you kind of discovered for yourself that the things that you had learned in church, I guess, or heard or read in the Bible were real, what happened or what came about in your life that made you get your own discovery to say, yeah, this stuff is real?
That's a great question. You talk to some people and you get this like super dramatic story. I was on my deathbed and I saw angels and things like that. It wasn't exciting at all. I just woke up one day and I started asking myself, like, you keep saying it, but where do you fall on it? And the main argument that I heard against it was how much of it you had to take on faith, how it wasn't really provable or anything like that. And that was a good point. And I struggled with that for a little bit, but then I started to look around the world and realize that there's a lot that people take on faith, more than I think even they realized. Even the things that are quote unquote fact, there's this term called half-life of information, and every field has a half-life, which basically just refers to the point of there's a certain amount of years where, statistically speaking, half the information that is believed to be true about that field has since been proven to be either misunderstood or completely false. And it's because as we learn more, we realize how little we know. So
exactly.
When I was in the pursuit of truth, you know what I mean? I was like, well, there's nowhere I can look to get the truth in the way that I'm trying to explain it, where I'll never need another explanation, where I'll have all the answers and things like that, and nothing will ever change. And because I realized I wasn't going to get that anywhere, I just decided I might have a bias skew to what I believe because of my own personal experiences, but I figured that's what everybody's got going on. So I just decided to stop trying to be a scientist about it and stop trying to logic my way into it or out of it, and just decide to have the faith in that the way I would have decided to have a faith in anything else.
That's good. That's good. Do you have any advice or knowledge, or like you would say something that you would tell a teenager, for instance, or someone, you're a young man as yourself who is kind of on the cusp, right? Like, is this true? Is this real? Because there's so much now, like you were saying, with the science of the religion or the science of how things came to be, the science of the world, and so many different entities want to take, God out of it or religion out of it. Is there anything that you would say to a person to be like, hey,
That's a good question. I would say that it's a process. Regardless of where you land on this, it really is a process. And there's a certain amount of living that you have to do before you can really get answers to the what you're looking for, because you just don't. The reason you have all these doubts is because you just don't have enough lived experience to figure it out, which is why I mean even currently I'm still struggling a little bit, but so you kind of just have to, you got to trust the process, and you have to trust the process more than yourself. don't think that you got it, because you really don't. You know, I mean, I was on Facebook the other day. I looked at my memories, a post I made like even like 2 years ago. I was like, already, I'm like, this is cringy. I can't believe I thought this 2 years. You know, when I look back 10 years, I expect that. But
Okay.
we like to think that we're more developed than we are. But if you are constantly growing and you're constantly learning, then every time you look back, it's just staring you in the face of how much you didn't know at that time. And that could be as recent as like last week, like, wow, I was wrong. So like
Yeah.
you just got to take a step back and just let the information come to you. Look for what you, like, look and search, but like understand that you're gonna accidentally find a lot of it. So you really just got to give life time to throw what it's gonna throw at you.
And it will throw some stuff at you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you mentioned briefly spiritual warfare. Have you read the book This Present Darkness? Have you read that book?
That is actually my main inspiration. I love that book.
Man. Yes. And you know, that book changed my whole understanding about prayer and interceding. Because that book is phenomenal. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Terry.
Because I was going to say, if you have not read that book, you definitely need to read that book.
Yeah, I would recommend it to everybody, religious or not. It's just the idea of because you can pretty much apply most philosophies to it. If you subscribe to Muslim faith, if you subscribe to the universe or the ancestors or whatever, that most schools of thought subscribe to some kind of third party energy,
higher.
So you know, and from a purely agnostic standpoint, all a book like that does is give a face and a name to that higher energy or power or whatever that it is. So, you know, the idea that the universe is moving in these ways and all these forces that are coming together, colliding and creating these circumstances or whatever, you know, it just does such a great job of explaining it and personifying it. And it was also the first time where up until that point I had this belief, and it's still like, again, just a thing of faith because I have not been to hell, but I always had this idea that hell is Satan is on the throne and everybody else is just under him, you know, suffering, burning, or serving, whatever. But This Present Darkness kind of gave me the impression that like there's nobody happy in hell, like not even Satan, like he's stuck down there with everybody else. You know what I mean? Like
listen. Yes.
So
you know, but you know, if you have a vivid imagination and you read that book and it's talking about the actual spiritual warfare and what happens when, you know, someone is interceding and the fighting that's going on and the descriptions of the angels, the book is just awesome.
Yeah, right up there with it's definitely the best written of the ones I've read, but in terms of like personal enjoyment, it's right up there with Pilgrim's Progress and Narnia. I came up with a lot of Christian material. Just I mean that's how my household was, and it wasn't forced on me so much as like I actually liked it. So Pilgrim's Progress.
That's good.
Yeah. I listened to this radio drama called Adventures in Odyssey. I really liked that. I didn't really start having a distaste for the media until like I started watching the movies. You know, things like the gospel and stuff like that. That stuff kind of left a bad taste in my mouth because it took the subtlety that things like This Present Darkness has and kind of stripped it all away. You know, it's like Christians are heroes and non-believers are evil. And I was just the two camps. And I was like, this isn't how you get through to people. This is how you alienate people. This is how you make enemies out of people. And I actually think that I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the we live in a society guy, but I'm going to be that guy for a minute. I just feel like that has more or less been adopted by the majority of people now is that they draw a very, very, very stark line in the sand. And where I feel like I think it's healthy to have that line in the sand where you go, I'm not stepping over this line, but I can commune with people who stand on that side of the line. But now it's like, if you draw that line and you're not on this side of the line, you are everything that's wrong with everything in my life, and it's just like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't help you have it's not conducive for conversation. It's not conducive with building bridges. It's not helping you solve any problem. It's having you think that you can sum up everything that's wrong, or everything that you perceive to be wrong with the world, in one caricature of people become stand-ins for these problems. Like, oh, there's violence in the street, it's because of that guy, or a person who says that kind of thing, or somebody who believes this or doesn't believe that, and blah blah blah.
The pointing fingers.
So I appreciated stories like this, Present Darkness, and that's what I try to do. I would never put myself on his level, but that's what I try to do when I'm writing my stories, is kind of remind people that there is some subtlety to that. I have Christian characters who are not always as righteous as they should be, and I have quote unquote villainous characters, and like, I have villainous Christians, heroic Christians, villainous non-believers, heroic non-believers, people who act in their better interests or against their best interests for the sake of being selfless or whatever, from all sorts of different trains of thought. And it's not even just Christian and atheists. It's all sorts of different people, all sorts of different races, all sorts of different, whatever it is you subscribe to, ethnicity, sexual orientation, blah, blah, blah. Just take it all and show that you're going to find virtue and vice in anybody you come into contact with. So,
during COVID, when people couldn't go to church or as much, or, you know what I'm saying? And I guess my question is, do you think that religion as it has been is in trouble? Like, meaning, do you think more people are studying on their own, not going to church, or losing the taste for religion, if you will? You know what I'm saying? Because like in the media, what was I looking at on Facebook the other day? And they basically were talking about how Christians can be so judgy, right? Unless that line you're talking about that they just will not cross. And if you're on the other side of that line, they don't, like you say, deal with you, a person or whatnot. But I guess a lot of people can like really question that, because like, is that really being Christian, right? Because if you think about how the stories of Jesus was, he did not stay away from people who would have been considered less than, right? Those are the people that he concentrated on. So, and so when you think about today and how some people react or behave as Christians, you think we have a problem?
Yeah. Anytime you have an infallible creation and share it with fallible beings, you're gonna have a problem. The biggest threat to Christianity are Christians, because it has a bar that people just can't live up to. You can't be perfect in a way that Jesus is perfect, and it's
not at all.
But I do think that outside of the natural conundrum that comes with it, there's the idea that Jesus didn't shy away from the people like that. That is a very good thing to remember, but it's also a good thing to remember that in the midst of being with those people, he wasn't necessarily like those people. And
correct. That's right.
And I think, again, you end up with two schools of thought. You have the people who will not go near them at all because they're better than them. Mm-hmm. And then you have the people that will be all with them, whoever them is, but also allow themselves to turn into that. Like there's there's this weird place where like you have to be brave enough as a believer to say that there's some things I just can't do. There's some things I can't sign off on. There's some things I can't condone, even though that's going to get you a lot of slack to take that stand. But you also, it's weird because they, you know, they, you there's like that there's this really subtle, like really small area, and it's really hard to get into, but it's a really small area of people who know that you can't be about this, but it doesn't mean everybody else is the bad guy because they're like this, and everybody else outside of that really small safe zone are the ones who are holier than thou, and the ones who think that they can be however they want because nobody can judge them but God. And like both of those statements are like wrong. Like you can't. So do I think it's in trouble? Yeah, I think it's in trouble because I don't think COVID really messed everything up because the doors closed and then a lot of them didn't reopen. And
correct.
And now people, and not that this wasn't happening before, but now especially a lot of people are they want to be self-taught and self-made, and the thing is you're dealing with a lot of material that's like it's too much for you to figure it all out on your own. I saw this great quote just now, actually, like 10 minutes before we started this. It was this pastor, I think it was Tony Evans. He said, you don't have to go to church to be a Christian. It was in quotes. You don't have to go to church to be a Christian. He said, yes, that's true. There are many people who study the word and pursue God on their own. And you don't have to stay at home to be married, but stay away from your home long enough and you'll see your relationship affected.
That's true. That's a good point. And you know what? And to that point, for me, because with the COVID, I was out of church for almost 2 years, about a year and a half. Now, yes, I watched the YouTube, church on TV. Did not study as well as I should or whatnot. But it really did, like you're saying, I got to the point where I needed to go back. And that's what I did. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I found myself kind of there too. In fact, I'll go ahead and expose myself. I didn't do the virtual at all. When my church closed, my Sundays were free. And I realized that I had to like kind of hold myself accountable, because it was like, without it being a habit, I wasn't disciplined enough to pursue it on my own.
Okay.
And, it was
that's
like
honest.
It was a moment of like real like conviction where I was just like, dog, you've been proclaiming this for so long, but as soon as it went away, you didn't really go out your way to get it back. Now when my church opened again, I went right back.
That's
but
good.
That's always been in the back of my mind. Since then, it's been in the back of my mind. It's like, is this kind of thing wherever it happens, would I carry it the same way? So now I try to make myself go to the extracurriculars now, because I was really lax on like going to Bible study or whatever, because my church is like in the city, so it's like 30 minutes to get there. And I do it on Sundays, but I don't necessarily go down there on Wednesdays or anything. But I was like, nah, you really have to start doing that, because you can't, 2 hours once a week is not gonna get it done. And I feel a noticeable difference between when I'm actually pursuing it heavy and when I'm not. And I just mean like, it's harder when I'm not doing that, it's harder for me to stay on what I refer to as the upright path. There are things that call to me that are hard to say no to. I find myself slipping in all sorts of different areas. I mean, like when I'm on it, I don't eat fast food. Like I can say no to fast food. I can write every day. Because it's just like, it's just another area of discipline. When I have it on lock, it affects every part of my life. But when I let it slip, everything else in my life slips. So I know I have empirical evidence, at least for myself in particular, that it goes hand in hand.
Okay. So tell us what's next for you. Like, what do you have on the horizon for yourself?
I'm working on a sequel to Plus Size, which was the second book that I did, which is about the plus size Black woman who, you know, finds out she has superpowers and she wants to do right by her city, but of course she's fat, so there's a stigma. And it was my attempt at addressing the self-image and body positivity joint and all that. You know, trying to find that safe zone between, listen, 400 pounds overweight is unhealthy, but bullying somebody for what they look like is not a good thing to do. You know.
Okay, so let's talk about plus size for 1 second, though. So how did you come about? What made you write about plus size? Because you're not a Black woman and you're not fat.
Both true. I had a girlfriend back in 2016. She's a beautiful woman. And she was a Black woman who was plus size. And
Okay.
we were having a conversation about, you know, just her daily life. And, you know, she was giving me testimony. And I was like, dang, this is like, there's really nobody exempt from this whole bullying joint. Because like I have a thing against bullying. I hate it because it happened to me so much.
Oh my God.
And you know, when we kind of got in my mind that once I got to college, that kind of thing would fall away. But then, you know, hearing from her is like, it doesn't go anywhere. People are douchebags. So I was just like, you know what, that would be an interesting premise. It didn't even start out as a superhero. In fact, it started out as the story was going to be about a somebody. I didn't know if it was going to be a man or a woman, but it was going to be a person who actually designed superhero apparel. He was like a costume designer in a world where superheroes existed, and he was like super famous and whatever. And but his you know, his brand didn't appeal to all sizes. So this plus size superhero was gonna walk into his you know, shop one day needing to be fitted, and it was gonna be this whole controversial thing that he decides to take her on as a client, and you know, this whole thing. And he wanted to sexualize her, and she didn't want to do that because she didn't want to be she didn't want to buy into the whole sex sells thing and blah blah blah. And I wasn't exactly sure what it was going to be, but it was going to be something along those lines. And then I just decided I didn't feel like doing that. I didn't feel like writing a fashion story. I don't know anything about fashion. But I liked the idea of the superhero. I had already had a basic outline for what that might look like. So I went to her and I said, I'm going to make you a superhero. And I took her and a lot of other women that I knew, took some of their core traits, some of their core fears, some of their core beliefs, kind of mixed all that together into one centralized character that was supposed to be a stand-in for them. Not every woman, but for at least for them, because I knew them intimately.
Okay.
I knew some of the things that they had struggled with and everything like that. And that's how I came up with Trisha Morgan, who was the protagonist of the story. And I decided to give her the power of telepathy, because the whole thing about it is that they all would tell me about how many insecurities they had. So I thought the biggest obstacle for this woman to overcome would be if she definitively knew at all times what people thought about her. You know, she can see through the false smiles and she can see through all that. So she has to work extra hard to maintain her confidence, because it's not just paranoia. Like, she can hear what people aren't saying. And
this seems like that would be stressful, Alex.
Oh yeah, it is. That was kind of the whole point, that she, you know, ultimately the only way that you are going to escape this is if you can really rise above it. Because a lot of us can put our insecurities on the back burner if we can convince ourselves that we just don't know what's going on. So, and if we don't know what's going on, we can just pretend that it's not as bad as we might be imagining it. And a lot of times it's not as bad as we're imagining it, but that's the safety in it, is that we don't know. So we can just avoid it, not bring it up, not ask, not get asked, and you know, just carry on. But whenever we're faced with it head on, that insecurity starts to come to the surface, because we never really learn how to deal with it, because we spend so much time avoiding it. And there's this woman who, she can't avoid
it. Okay. So now back to you telling us what's next.
Yeah.
So the part two.
Yeah. So I don't know if I should spoil it, but she finds out that, you know, in the course of the first story, she finds out that she's not the only superpowered being at her school. But the other person at the school that has powers is involved with it gets kind of wild toward the end. He's involved with a trafficking ring, basically, where there's a lot of profit to be made by taking and selling these, they call them miracles, these superpowered individuals. And she's like, okay, I gotta stop that. And by the time she finds out about it at the first story, it's actually developed into something else. So she deals with that first problem, and then she goes, all right, now that I've settled this and I've got all this on lock and I've kept insert character here safe, now I'm coming after you. And the second story is about her going after that person.
Okay. So stopping them from monetizing or capitalizing on their gift. Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of got somewhat of a political skew to it, you know, the idea that there are people who will exploit you, and you know, especially in the Black community, that what people don't like on, you know, what people don't like, they will fetishize. It's and it's not that overt. I mean, like, nobody ever has like a speech like, when you black girl magic. It's nothing like that, because I'm not that guy.
Okay.
But it is somewhat of a stand-in for that, because all miracles have these purple eyes, so they're easy to identify.
Okay.
But as these spiritual beings, you know, they are kind of ostracized, because people don't want to hear about all that. People don't want to hear about the religion and things like that, blah, blah, blah. So a lot of times they find themselves being alone in a room full of non-believers and whatnot. But secretly, you know, there are people like, I want to sleep with that person. I want to say I slept with a miracle. I want to say that I killed a miracle. I want to say that I, you know, stole the powers of a miracle. There's all sorts of different motivations for people who, and just the idea that they hate you to your face, but they secretly envy you behind your back. That whole thing.
Okay. So tell the audience how they can get your books if they're interested in purchasing your books.
Amazon is the best way. Alex Hood Fuller. The first book is called Mark of the Demon. The second book is called Plus Size, that I just talked about. And the third book is called Into the Furnace. And they're all on Amazon under that name. I believe they're also on Goodreads. Yeah, they're also on Goodreads, and you can get it from me directly if you're local. You know, you can find me on Instagram at OrionPax13. Find me on Facebook under Hood Fuller. You can watch his YouTube channel and contact the lovely Miss Rhonda and show.
So is your YouTube channel Hood Fuller as well?
No, my YouTube channel is actually Alex Fuller. I made it before the Hood.
Alex Fuller. Okay.
Happened.
You're Fuller. Yeah. All right. So is there anything else you want us to know about you that we haven't talked about or mentioned before we end for the night?
I'm single. I'm kidding. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding, but that's not my pitch.
Okay, now when them young ladies start inboxing you on Facebook and Instagram, it's not my fault, because this is an international podcast. Okay, so it's not my fault.
Listen. I'm a handful. Don't even get involved. I'm annoying. But yeah, if there's anything I want anybody to know, it doesn't have anything to do with branding or anything like that. I just want people to know that yesterday I was watching the Bears and Packers game, just because that's the game that was on. I didn't even particularly care about it, but it was on. And they were doing a starting lineup. You know, everybody was saying their names. And one of the guys said his name. And I said, that is a really familiar name. So I called my boy up. And I said, hey, I just seen such and such on television. Is that the guy we went to school with? And he said, yeah, that's him. I rode the bus with this kid when he was 11. Went to middle school,
Okay.
and he's the second person that I went to school with that went to the NFL. I know two people who have gone to the NFL, and I know them from way back, like when I was like a kid. So it was just this moment where it's like there's really absolutely no reason why, if there's anything that you want to do with your life, you can't go out and do. Like the NFL seems so far, like it's so completely removed from my life, and I know two people that do it. Like I could call them right now if I wanted to. And that makes you realize how close these things really are. Yeah, it takes a lot of work, takes a lot of time. You got to be willing to give your life to it, sure.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to sacrifice a lot, but there's nothing that you want that you can't just go out there and work your behind off to get. Now, are you always going to get as far as, whatever? That who's to say? But and you don't necessarily have to even envision it as like, if I'm not star-studded, I didn't succeed, because it's not like that. But you also don't have to think that you can't be that. I'm trying to get there.
Bet yourself.
Yeah, trying to get there, not quite there yet, but you never know. I just want people to know that it was such a surreal experience, and it could happen to anybody.
All right. And I want to encourage you as well, as you are encouraging others to keep striving, keep reaching your goals that you have set forth for yourself, and keep traveling, Mr. Traveler. But I really want to thank you for being a guest on TME Podcast.
Oh yeah, no problem. I want to thank you for the opportunity. I was so excited to hear from you.
You're right. Thank you. Thank you so much. So thank everyone for watching and listening to the TME Podcast and listening to my guest, Alex Fuller. Please look up his Instagram and check out his YouTube channel. On YouTube, he is Alex Fuller. And on Instagram, you're Hood Fuller. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So look him up, ladies and gents. And as he said, ladies, he's single. That's what he has said, though. That's what he has said. But thank you for joining us, and continue to watch, listen, share, and comment. Leave us a feedback if you have, or a takeaway. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for listening and watching, and have a good night.
I would just like to take the time to thank you for listening, and thank you to the guest today on the TME Podcast. Please continue to listen on your favorite podcast platform. And again, we will see you next time. Thank you for listening. I'll see you at the top. Bye-bye.